Hadithi Tales presents The Fire Before Dawn, The Rise of Africa Foretold. Before the coming of strangers with pale skins and foreign gods, before the red earth of Africa was stained by chains and betrayal, there was peace, there was harmony, there was home. Among the many ancient peoples of Africa, the Igbo of southeastern Nigeria were a people of deep tradition and cosmic vision. They spoke in proverbs, walked in rhythm with nature, and lived with reverence for the ancestors whose spirits whispered through the trees. Their world was not merely physical, it pulsed with the sacred. In Igbo belief, every man carried a chi, a personal spirit, and the land itself, Allah, was mother and judge. Life was guided by the divine, by the drum, and by the wisdom of the elders. And though the world would one day fall into shadow, these sacred truths remained like embers, waiting to burn bright again. And this, dear listener, is the story of one such ember. A fire passed from father to son, a legacy that refused to die, a prophecy whispered through bloodlines, and which the land of Africa will live to see. This is The Fire Before Dawn. Part 1. In the dusky heart of a remote village in southeastern Nigeria, wrapped in ancient forest and kissed by the soft winds of the Niger River, there stood a clay-walled homestead. The scent of burning firewood lingered in the air, and the sounds of distant drumming echoed across the night. This was the home of Otu Nna, a man whose back had bent with the weight of 80 years, and whose eyes had seen kingdoms rise and fall. Otu Nna was a man of the old ways, a keeper of sacred proverbs, a custodian of ancestral wisdom. His skin bore the etchings of time, and his voice carried the rhythm of the ancestors. He wore his red cap with pride, the mark of a titled elder, and adorned himself in hand-woven wrappers dyed in deep indigo. Around his neck hung ivory beads passed down through generations. He spoke the Igbo tongue with reverence, never mixing it with the foreign tongue of the oppressor. His compound was decorated with woolly symbols, and at its center stood the Ofo stick, the emblem of justice and spiritual authority. This was not just a magnificent home, it was a reflection of cultural heritage, a place where the Igbo traditions were observed and preserved. There was a central hut where Otu Nna resided, decorated with traditional artifacts and stools. It served as the place where the family held meetings and received guests. Agadi Nwa, the wife of Otu Nna, lived in her own hut, Ulo Nwunye, as Igbo tradition demanded. She was his first and only surviving wife, the quiet matriarch of the household. His second wife, Nwa Nwunye, had journeyed to the land of the ancestors after falling to an illness whose name no one could name. Perhaps Adibia, a native doctor, could have saved her, but the white missionaries had cast long shadows over the land. They forbade the ways of the ancestors, silencing the healers and replacing sacred roots with foreign pills and prayers. Nwa Nwunye had borne no child, yet she was a woman of striking beauty, tall, graceful, with a figure that turned heads from one village to the next. Many men desired her, many wrestled for her hand, but it was Otu Nna, then a champion wrestler in his youth, who claimed her. His strength, both of arm and spirit, was unmatched. To Otu Nna, tradition was not something to be kept in the past. It was the very breath of life. A man who forgets where he comes from, he often said, is like a stream that denies its source. His pride in Igbo culture ran deep, his loyalty to the old ways unshaken. He walked in the footsteps of the ancestors, with head held high and heart rooted in the voice of the gods. The Igbo villages thrived in peace, their lands pulsing with life and purpose. True love and kinship flowed through the hearts of the people like a sacred river. Men rose with the sun, tilling the red earth with strength and dignity, their sons beside them, learning, laboring, becoming. Women, like Agadi Nwanyi, stood as the pillars of the homestead, not only nurturing its body, but also guarding the spirit of the household. They were the heartbeats of the family, the silent strength behind every thriving home. Elders like Otu Nna honored the shrine with reverence, speaking to the gods in the old tongue, offering kola and prayer. And because the sacred ways were kept, the gods did not withhold their blessings. Harvests were bountiful, yams piled high like hills, cassava thick in the soil, vegetables green and lush. Every season ended with songs and celebration. Villages alive with drumming, dancing, and feasting. Fufu, ofe, abacha, palm wine, all kinds of Igbo delicacy flowed like laughter around the fire. The scent of roasted plantain, pepper soup, and smoked fish lingered in the air. You could smell life itself from every corner of the Igbo village. But all of that, all of it, was before the cruel foreigners invaded the villages and tore the hearts from the people. And now things were changing fast, fast like lightning. The times were dark. The land of the black men was troubled. Its proud spirits groaned under the white man's yoke. Raider kings, ghosts in pale skin, had soured the very essence of life. They defiled the shrines, burned sacred forests, and replaced the drumbeat of the ancestors with the clang of foreign chains. Kings were toppled and languages mocked. They stole the able-bodied, branded them like cattle. The entire Igbo community was being reduced to ashes. Africa was weeping. The white man stripped her people naked, of dignity, of power, of home. Nwa Okorobìa, the son of Otu Nna, watched with a bleeding heart. A tall, broad-shouldered youth with eyes that held fire and grief. He was the only son of his aging parents. He was everything a young Igbo man should be. Wise beyond his years, brave, respectful, skilled in wrestling, agile in farming, and fluent in the proverbs of his people. But his soul was weary. Too many brothers had vanished, some shot before his very eyes, others dragged away like livestock. Bullets had silenced his age mates, brave men whose laughter still echoed in his memory. His own brother, a son of his mother's womb, had been taken when Okorobìa was just a boy. He had watched it happen, helpless. He had heard mothers cry until their voices fell into silence. His own mother had nearly joined the ancestors from the shock. If not for the dibia, she would have died that day. She collapsed at the sight, her cries splitting the sky. Haunted by ghosts of memory, Okorobìa had known little joy since childhood. It was not the fault of his parents. They had loved him fiercely, but the darkness that had descended on their village came from beyond the hills, on foreign boots. Since the white man's arrival, happiness had become a stranger in the home of Otu Nna. Each day, Okorobìa sat beneath the odum tree, weeping when no one watched. His mother, Agadi Nwanyi, noticed, but said nothing. Her heart still ached for her stolen son. The sight of Okorobìa's sorrow often sent her into songs. Old threnodies whispered to the wind. She placed offerings at the ancestors' shrine, praying for her remaining son's strength. One evening, as a quiet harmattan breeze swept through the compound, Otu Nna summoned his son to the fire. The night sky above them was a deep blanket scattered with ancestral stars. The old man sat on his okposi, wooden stool, clutching his carved walking stick like a lion guarding his pride. In his younger days, he had served as an Otu Nche, a youth defender of the land, and later as one of the Andiche, Council of Elders. In the Igbo tradition, father-son conversations were not uncommon. However, what was spoken beneath the stars on that day would not merely be a father's final words, but a prophecy, a spark, a torch passed from elder to heir, a fire before dawn. Stay tuned for part 2, in which you'll witness Otu Nna's final prophecy, a powerful message that echoes across generations. You'll feel the shift of destiny as Okorobìa rises, not as a warrior of war, but as a symbol of awakening and a representation of a rising Africa. Indeed, Africa is stirring. The time of prophecy is here. Subscribe to Hadithi Tales and click to watch part 2, The Prophecy of the Storm. The fire is only beginning.